Hello everyone, and welcome to the second in our watercolor series video classes. Today we are going to do a watercolor resist using tape. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about what we need. So first thing we need, watercolor paper. Now I buy my watercolor paper in a big pad like this, and then I just cut it down into quarter-size sheets. So that's not to say this technique can't be done on a large piece of watercolor paper. So if you wanted to use a large piece of paper to do this, you certainly can do that. I'm just using a smaller piece of paper for convenience purposes. So then what else we need is watercolor paints, some brushes, some water to rinse your brush in, and if you don't have watercolor paints, you can use a water-based marker like a Crayola marker. And to do that, what you need is some kind of plastic surface to scribble that marker on. So here I just have a piece of plastic, plexiglass I believe is what it is. And you just take your marker and scribble some of the marker on the piece of plastic. So if you have like a Cool Whip container lid, that will work just fine. Just something where the color is not going to absorb into it. Okay, then we also need painter's tape. I'm using the 1/2-inch size. You can use larger sizes. If you want to use a larger size, you also can cut it down into a smaller size by just taping it onto like a cutting mat here and an X-Acto knife and just cut it down to the size that you want. All right, so what we're going to do, and I've kind of started this already, we're going to take our watercolor paper and we're going to tape it to some kind of surface. What this does is it holds the paper flat while you're working on it, and it also, we're putting the tape on as a resist so that that's going to resist wherever the paint is. So this can be put down, the tape can be put down in any pattern that you want. Doesn't have to be anything specific. This is just a random pattern that I'm doing and putting the tape down on there. Got a few smaller pieces already cut here so that I can divide that quadrants. And you're just going to kind of divide it up into quadrants or make a pattern with your tape. And the key thing is to make sure that your tape is down really well. Because if you don't do that, you'll end up with paint bleed underneath your pieces. And what gives this technique such a nice look is that you get nice white crisp lines. Add one more piece of tape right in there. So once I've got my tape down, then I just take my fingernail, and I mean you could use like the back of a credit card or something like that to do this. I know some people are very fancy about their nails. I am not one of those people. So we're just going to make sure that all of our tape is down really well along all of the outer edges of the tape. And now we're ready to paint. So I've primed my watercolor paints by just adding some water to each of the wells, and all I do is just take a paintbrush and just dip some water into each of the wells. That way your paints are ready to use when you want to paint. Now for this technique, I kind of like to use what they call a wet on dry, which what that means is we're going to take wet paint and paint it on dry paper. Now you can do a wet on wet technique if you want, and then the colors are going to blend really well together. So it really depends on the kind of look you want. I really like the wet on dry technique for this. So we're going to start our painting, and I'm going to start with some yellow right in the middle. And when you do a wet on dry technique, your paint is very vibrant because it's not watered down with the water, and it'll have more pigment in it. So we're just, sometimes it takes a little bit more to cover the paper. So you can still add water. I mean, don't be afraid that you can't add any water to this. And what you're going to do is just paint in each of the quadrants on your paper. So I think we'll add some orange up here next. And again, you can see I'm just painting in the individual quadrants. Now, if you use markers for this technique, the colors aren't going to be quite as vibrant, and I'm going to show you that right here. I'm going to pick up this red color that I scribbled on the palette. They don't have quite as much pigment in as a watercolor paint does. But that's not to say that you can't use them. You're going to just get a bit of a softer color than you would with the watercolor paints. So you can see that that color is not quite as vibrant. Now you can make that darker. What I recommend is let that dry a little while and then go back over it with more color. All right, let's see. We'll add some green in here. So we'll get that all filled in. And you can blend colors together. I'll do that on this one here. We'll add some blue in here. And then I'm going to add a darker blue on the bottom of that. So don't think that each of these quadrants has to be one specific color. You can blend your colors together. So I've got the two colors on there. Now to get them to blend, I'm just going to take a wash of water and go over the whole thing. And the water is going to work to blend those two colors together in the middle. Let's see. Let's add some purple down here. The purple in this set looks more like a dark blue than a purple. Try and get that to even out a little bit more. All right, let's see, we've got 4 more quadrants left. Let's do a dark green. Do this dark blue green. We'll put that right there. My brush is a little bit wet there for that. I'll dry that off. That's where your paper towels are kind of nice to have those. You can pick up a little bit more concentrated color. There we go. Let's do a pink. A pink purple over here. Add some more of that in there. All right, 2 more quadrants to go. Let's see, what do you think? Let's do a lighter green. I'll do this lighter green up here. A little bit more water in my brush. There we go. All right. And I think, let's see, what color haven't we used? Pretty much used all of them. I think I'm going to take, let's mix a color. So we're going to take some of this light green. And we're going to take some of this light blue and we're going to mix that together to create kind of a different shade of the blue-green. I'm going to add a little bit more green into that because I want it to be a little bit brighter. I'm going to put that shade right here. So don't be afraid to mix your colors. If you don't have the color that you want in your palette, go ahead and mix a color in the wells up above there. Okay, so I'm going to go through, now this is dried a little bit, I'm going to go through and add another layer of this red. Now this was the marker color. And this is how you can get those colors to darken up, is if you let it dry a little bit and then go through and pick up some more of your color. And then you can just add it over the top. All right, we've got everything painted now. So once it's painted, you need to set it aside and let it dry really well. And I've got one here that I did earlier, and I had kind of started taking the tape off. But how you tell this is dry is if you touch it with your hand and it still feels cool to the touch, then it is not dry. So you want to make sure that it's dry completely. So this one, I placed my tape down so that I ended up with diamond shapes in the middle. So this one's ready and dry, and I had started taking the tape off, and I want to show you a couple tricks for peeling that tape back. So when you peel the tape off, you don't want it to rip your paper. So if you peel it back on itself, so see how it's folded back on itself and I'm just peeling it away, that is how you want to take your tape off. Watercolor paper is very fibrous, so by doing this, my fingernails to pull that, then you're less likely to cause rips in your paper. Because remember, we pushed this tape down really well so that we would get nice crisp white lines like this. So again, peel it back. And this is kind of the fun part to me, because it always looks a little funny with the blue tape on there, but when you see, whoop, that one peeled off a little bit. All right, there we go. 2 more pieces. All right. 1 more piece to go. All right, so there you've got a nice pattern with bright white lines. This makes great fun art, just abstract artwork. So it's another fun thing is to tape one down for your kids and let them paint it, and let them paint it however they would like. It's really fun to see what they come up with. And again, you can use a whole big sheet of watercolor paper. So if you do a big sheet, you could stick this in a frame, put it on your wall. All depends on what you want to do with it. So I've got a couple other samples here just to show you. So here's one where I did wet on wet and let the colors kind of blend together. So that is a real pretty look. You can do that. Here's one where I just painted it straight on. Again, my tape is in all different directions. It's just very abstract. This one here, I actually made strips of, so some stripes going this way with my tape, and then some stripes going this way, and some going this way. So I got a really kind of a fun pattern there. And this one, I used different size pieces of tape. So I have some skinny tape, and some that was a 1/4 inch, and some that was a 1/2 inch. And then I also, before I started painting, did the crayon resist technique, which we did last week. So there, I just drew patterns with the white crayon and then painted over the top of them. I did get a little bit of bleed with that real skinny tape. And then what I did is I just took and, with a pencil, penciled in some words on here and then went over it with just a fine point black Sharpie marker. And so this I'm going to actually turn into a card for a graduate. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with this. It's all up to your imagination as to how you lay your tape out. So have fun with it. I hope you enjoyed this class. We have another class coming next week on Thursday at 5:30 again, and that will be painting with a plastic bag and markers. And then we're also going to do a background with plastic wrap. So join me next week for another watercolor class. In the meantime, I hope you all stay well. Enjoy the beautiful day today. Thanks. Bye.